Now I'm going to show you how to change colors at the end of a row using a magic knot so that you do not have to sew the ends in. If you do this properly, you should have no unraveling of your knots. So I highly suggest that you practice your magic knots until you're comfortable with them so that they don't come undone. Now, you get to the end of the row and you need to change colors. And it just so happens that I have a very dark color and a very light color that I'm changing to. So once you get to the end of your row, and I have a stitch marker here to show that the end of the row is right here, you'll want to cut your yarn as close to the end of your stitch as possible. So you're going to cut your yarn, and you see how close I am to the end of that stitch. Now you want to be able to pull that stitch out. Now you can just do a couple of rows if you'd like. I tend to pull a few more rows so that I have room to work with my knot. And I will put a stitch marker in it so I don't lose that stitch as I'm tying this knot. Now, as I showed you before, I lay my yarns out like this, and I do this on my lap. It's really fairly easy. So I start with the bottom yarn, and it doesn't really matter which yarn you put on top and which one you use on the bottom. But when you are changing colors at the end of the row, you have to be a little more careful about where you are placing the second knot, which is the knot that is tied on the project. The knot that's on the skein, it doesn't matter how long you make this tail. So like I showed you before, you go over and under, and then you want to make sure that that loop goes over so that you have this look right here, and then you go over and through and pull that yarn nice and tight. Now on this end, I'm still going to go over and under just like I did, but I'm not going to leave as much of a tail. So on this side, I need to leave a smaller tail. So start off with it over, under, and then I make sure that that loop with the tail is pointing out that way. But when I am pulling this knot tight, I want to leave a very small amount of yarn on the end. That's so that this knot ends up at the end of the row and not somewhere at the beginning of the row. And again, it's harder because I don't have as much of a tail, but you can still pull that knot nice and tight. Now the type of yarn I'm using is Yarn Bee's Soft Secrets, so it's very, very, very soft and slippery, so these knots can come undone. So you really want to be certain that they're secure. And of course I'm going to cut off my tails, and I try to leave just a little bit more because usually on these blankets I put a border anyway. Leave a little bit of end. See how much end I've left there. And a little more end. Now, I'm going to go ahead and continue the rest of this project. This blanket is called Lazy Waves, in case you're wondering, and it's actually a really easy blanket to do. So I will go ahead and finish these last few stitches. And I do not hold my hook the way most people do, so don't make fun of the way I'm holding my hook. Now I'm at the end of the row here, and I have a double crochet left. And if I've done it properly, that knot sits right there. And then the way I do my rows is I crochet one, and I chain one, and then I turn my project, and then I start working in that chain. That's just for a straight row as well. And there you have it. And I'll do a couple of stitches, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So this is what the ends of the rows look like with the knots. The knot is tight and doesn't come undone. There's another knot here. And I do this at every every time I change colors, and the knots are, they don't show, and I don't have any ends to sew in. Now, just for the record, when I started this blanket, I did not know this technique, and so I have lots of ends to continue to sew in, unfortunately, but I did not want to restart the blanket. So there you have it.